Okay, well, thank you to Resuwreck in Basildon, who are not that far away from me, fortunately, for sending me this Nissan Townstar. So, first thing to say is if you're not subscribed, please consider doing so, because it really helps me keep making these videos. So, a Nissan Townstar. So why have we got this? Well, the main reason is because it's not really a Nissan. So this is actually a rebadged Kangoo E-Tech. So Renault make this vehicle, and if you've got a Zoe ZE50, if you take a look at, ignoring this badge, if you take a look at this switch gear, this is straight out of the Zoe ZE50 or Kangoo. All of these switch buttons will be very familiar. If we look at this, you wouldn't be able to tell whether it's from, you know, a Zoe ZE50 or a Kangoo E-Tech, so sort of the 2021 onwards Kangoo, or one of these. So realistically, this is just the same drivetrain I'm used to working on. So what's happened with this? So this has actually had a bump. It's come from Co-Parts. A guy wants to get it back on the road, and they've pretty much done the bodywork. There's a little bit left to do, and they're just having a bit of trouble with getting it to run and clearing some crash data, basically. So there's been some attempts to clear the crash data. So they had someone look at the crash, the sort of airbag control module. Thought they could clear the crash data, although it's very new. Obviously, this vehicle is only a couple of years old. So, yeah, they believed that they could clear it, but said it might involve a bit of back and forth. They at one point managed to get the van to run without the airbag module, because it's not part of the immobiliser system, the airbag module, but if it contains crash data, that can prevent the vehicle from starting. So someone managed to get the airbag module off and get the vehicle to run, but having sent the airbag module to someone who could apparently clear the crash data, then when they got it when they got it back and put it back on, then the van wouldn't run, and I think the person kind of became less responsive, and so the owners kind of got a little bit wit's end with it. But it wasn't too far away from me. It's got a Zoe drivetrain. And what can we do with it? So just firstly on the airbag module, so basically that's the airbag control module, that's the original one. They even then actually bought a brand new one from Nissan, which obviously comes with Renault written on it, because it's actually made by Renault. So yeah, it's got a Nissan Group sticker, but it comes in a Renault Group box. Yep, cool. And unfortunately, the diagnostic tools that the guys have got, they're not able to communicate with this vehicle. So this vehicle's got a secure gateway. And what that kind of basically means is that to do things diagnostically on the vehicle, certain things, you have to provide an access token to unlock the vehicle. And some people would cynically say that's so they can control it. Yeah, I'll let you make up your own minds about that one. But in terms of the sort of actual technology and what's really going on, so a vehicle's got CAN networks, they're just communication networks, nothing nothing really complicated. You might have like a multimedia network, so kind of a low level, less important network, and then you'll have like a drivetrain network, and you might have various others, but simply speaking, that's kind of how it works. And then certain ECUs will be connected to both. So if your diagnostic tool, through the diagnostic port, there'll be the two different, usually you'll have, in terms of a Zoe anyway, you've got like drivetrain CAN, and then you've got multimedia CAN on different pins. But yeah, certain ECUs will be able to go between networks, obviously, to kind of pick up different bits of information. So what can we do with this vehicle? Well, we've got the secure gateway, but with the right tool, you can unlock that gateway and do everything. With certain tools, we should be able to read fault codes, maybe look at live data, but not necessarily clear those fault codes, because you need this sort of gateway unlock to do that, and also to run sort of functions on the vehicle and stuff like that. Now, we've got the new airbag module. That's going to need initialising, so that's certainly going to need gateway unlock. But at the moment, the van doesn't run, and nobody knows why, because it doesn't now run even with the brand new airbag module, with no airbag module. So that's not too good. But yeah, let's try and have a look at it and see what we can do. So if we look under here, I was kind of telling you it's like a Kangoo, or it's like a Zoe. I mean, this stack is straight out of a Zoe. What I've been looking at under here is trying to work out what kind of variant it is, because we're going to do a little bit of diagnostic fishing. So there will be ECUs on this car that my diagnostic tool does know how to communicate with, even though mine's not got the updates to have this vehicle on it. So my tool can't unlock the gateway on this vehicle, but if it was updated, it could communicate with the vehicle at least and pull the fault codes. Having a little bit of trouble getting it updated, but still there will be ECUs on this vehicle which have been used in previous vehicles that my diagnostic tool does know how to communicate with. We've just got to find the right match effectively. So having a look under here, I was just having a little look, and if we look down here, what I've been looking at, if I can get my hand in the right place, if we go down the front of the stack, what we're looking for, can we go through here? I'm not sure if you can quite, hold on, can you see, let's get some light down there. Right, let's have a look down here in 1 minute. Right, we get some light down. Can you see there where that's blue? Yeah, just beyond that red bit that it wants to focus on. See that blue bit there? So that is very similar to the Zoe R135, which is a variant of the ZE50. So on earlier Zoes, like for example this one, that's an R110. So those connectors on the front of the stack, they are either grey or black connectors. These ones are blue, and you can see it if you look at different stacks on eBay. You can see the front of them got different connectors. So this one's got the latest variant, not massively surprising because it's a newer vehicle. So if we're aiming to do some diagnostic communication with this vehicle, we need to be IDing it as like a Zoe R135, basically. So we will give that a go and see what we can communicate with. The other thing I don't know, which may be possible, which we could try, is when you're connecting to the diagnostic port, that's communicating with one of the ECUs, and that ECU wants to see a token before it'll allow certain things. It's like the gatekeeper. But obviously all of these ECUs are just connected by wires, and those wires are all, in various places around the vehicle. So what's to stop us getting another diagnostic OBD socket, and now the wind started, and let's pop inside, and connecting that to somewhere else in the vehicle, so that, let's say for example, so we've got a diagnostic socket here, and let's say that only connects to the EV ECU, and that's our gateway, let's say for example. Now, I don't off the top of my head know what that module is, but suspect possibly the sort of heater control, something like that. So let's say that module was part of the powertrain, and that some of those wires were CAN wires. If we connected our diagnostic tool to those wires, put in an extra socket here, we could be behind the EV ECU that's the gatekeeper. So would that then enable us to get into this vehicle and do things on it without having to unlock the secure gateway? Interesting. So yeah, I've just got a bit of 12 volt battery support on to start with. I'm going to do some basic checks, because obviously this vehicle's had bodywork done on it. Have any fuses been blown? Has anything lost power? There's some common places I'm just going to check, things that I know that blow if you touch kind of things a bit wrong around the front of the stack, the kind of like fuses around the 12 volt battery. So we're just going to do some basic checks, and then we're going to do a bit of diagnostic fishing and go from there. One of the other options is a guy that I do some work with, sort of a few different projects with, and chat to quite a bit. He's just spent a lot of money on some brand new diagnostic equipment, and that will definitely be able to do secure gateway unlock, and it will quite possibly be able to initialize the new airbag module. So yeah, interesting. So I'm going to see what I can do. We may have to kidnap the guy with the really fancy equipment, or talk nicely to him, whatever works. He tends to be pretty busy, but all things are possible. We'll see what we can do. So yeah, I'm just going to do some basic checks, and then we'll see what we can do. All right. So I've had an initial look. Doesn't look like any fuses are blown, which is just a kind of good place to start. Just some other sort of further thoughts looking around under the bonnet. First thing is a bit of water there. I don't really like the look of that. I'm really hoping that hasn't gone in there. It's also a little bit damp there. That's a vent point for this PC case. So I'm kind of really hoping it's not got water in. I'm going to mop that up as my next job. The other thing that's interesting is loads and loads of cooling pipes down here. So I mean, being a much more modern vehicle, it's going to have a lot more water cooling. I wonder whether it's also got actually a water-cooled battery, which will be quite fascinating. But yeah, loads and loads and loads of pipes down here. Good old Renault. Oh, a cable tie on something. Yeah, cable tie around the coolant pipe. Fantastic. Not that that's just going to wear through it. But yeah, lots of coolant pipes. Be cool to get some information and work out the cooling system on this. The other fascinating thing is if you look under there, it's got the parking lock with the gear selector switch. So on a Zoe, they had this up until the end of the ZE40. So they've got the parking lock. So there's physically inside a cable which moves this lever. You can just see that cable going along there. If I just take you down, might get a better view. Slightly tricky. Yeah, you can just about see that lever there. And then that's the switch that kind of measures what gear it's in, albeit the motor is permanently connected to the gearbox, which has got a 10-to-1 reduction, straight into a diff and straight to the wheels. There's no clutch, there is no gears. It's just telling the car what you want to do, what mode do you want to be in. Do you want to be in neutral, so when you put your foot down nothing happens? It's just a simulated gear effectively. But what it has got is a parking lock. So but with the Zoes, so this is a 69, so this is like the last of the Zoes, late 2019, early 2020, that had the physical parking lock. The ZE50 forwards, so 2020 onwards, they've got the electronic parking brake on the rear calipers, and they just have a blanking plug here. So with the Kangoo E-Tech and the Townstar, Renault have decided to maintain the kind of old school way of doing it, and that is quite common with vans. You kind of get like the cheapest option basically. So yeah, if you don't need it, you kind of like don't get it basically, and that's how it works on the vans, albeit you get a massive cooling pipes. The other thing that fascinates me with vans is it's a 2023 van, you get a physical blade key. I mean, I know you want to make things cheaper, but come on, just put in a button, really. You know, I suppose it's because it's fleet managers that do the buying and they just want the cheapest per month kind of thing. But surely every other vehicle's got the button. Is it not cheaper just to put that in? I don't know. Anyway, right, I shall get the diagnostic equipment connected and we'll go from there. Cheers. Okay, sit rep. Some tea has been drunk, quite a lot of tea actually, and some progress has been made. So this van now starts and drives. And I've actually put some charge into it, which you'll notice if you're very observant. So we've still got the airbag issue, but we've resolved the non-start. And it was quite interesting, actually. Basically, I couldn't really record using the tool and that kind of thing because I had it one evening and it was kind of dark and raining and stuff. And yeah, I had basically a limited window to use the tool that can do the unlock and all that kind of stuff. So basically borrowed a tool from a garage, put some money on someone's desk, and their diagnostic tool disappeared at 6 o'clock one day and was back the next day at 9 o'clock sort of thing. And it was quite useful. So what did that tool show us? So that tool could recognise this vehicle. It's like a brand new £3,500 tool basically. So it knew about this vehicle. It could talk to all the ECUs. It can do gateway unlocks and all that kind of stuff, which was really cool. So we could read all the ECUs and get the codes. And so this vehicle, when you tried to start it, it would make absolutely no attempt to start at all. It's like you weren't turning the key. But it didn't have any red warnings on the dash. It had a check electric system, which is usually sort of low 12-volt battery or something kind of minor. But with the sort of the Zoes or the earlier Kangoos, when you get a major fault so that will cause a non-start, generally you get a red warning on the dash. That's as long as everything is kind of like communicating basically. You could have a broken wire, so the signal's even not received. But if you've got like a major failure, generally you get a red warning on the dash, and that tells you there's a drivetrain issue basically. But this vehicle was a little bit weird, and it would just make no attempt to start and there was no red warnings. Okay, so that was the state of it. The diagnostic tool said there was an interlock open. It said fuse box interlock. So an interlock is like the car's kind of telltale to know whether high voltage things are plugged in, like high voltage safety. So when you get the big orange plugs, you've got like two big pins, and in the middle there's two little pins. Or it might be just like a little jumper connector. So just like literally like a U-shaped kind of like tang. So when you plug it in, the car goes, oh, that's connected, and it will monitor the status of all the connectors, and there's covers that have got like micro switches, and it's just a safety thing because it won't energise the high voltage system if there's like a cover off that's got high voltage fuses behind it. Kind of makes sense. So, or if you've got like a high voltage cable and it's not quite pushed in properly, you don't want a bad connection because it could start a fire basically. So it kind of monitors the high voltage system. So it said interlock open, and I thought, well, that's a little bit weird because it's not got the red warning on the dash, but this is a new vehicle, so it could work differently. But anyway, it said fuse box interlock. So I thought, okay, fair enough. There's only one high voltage fuse box that I'm aware of. Now, this is a new vehicle, so there could be another one, but I thought, well, and it was reasonably easily accessible. So I removed that cover. So what then happened is we got a red warning on the dash, but then we got a second interlock fault. I was like, okay. So there's two interesting things there. One is that I've introduced another fault. So obviously what it's talking about is not the one I've just touched. So we know that kind of we're looking in the wrong place effectively as far as the car's concerned. But also the fault I'd introduced caused a red warning on the dash. So then we knew that the logic of this vehicle in terms of the powertrain faults was the same as the earlier ones. So that was quite useful. But it was a little bit weird in that we've got the existing interlock fault, but it didn't cause a red warning, so it was still a little bit weird. So, but using the new, the fancy diagnostic tool, once I'd refitted the cover and kind of put that back to how it was, I cleared my code that I'd introduced, and it cleared both codes. The other thing I also did was did a little bit of digging into the code that the car had, and it kind of like, I didn't find anything at all, which was a little bit weird. It was a valid Renault code, but didn't seem to sort of almost apply to this vehicle. A little bit strange. You usually find something about most codes somewhere in one of the sort of information systems, but kind of nothing. It's like, okay, that's a little bit weird. But clearing both of those codes, the one that was there and the one that I had introduced, the van starts and drives and does it consistently and charges. Now, what that will be, and I've seen this before, so it's a kind of introduced because there's a little quirk of this Renault style drivetrain, and the garage that have been working on it are kind of not aware of that basically. And what it is so this is an electric vehicle, okay? To charge the 12-volt battery, you don't have an alternator because the motor is only kind of like spinning. Obviously, when the car's moving, you don't have an alternator pulley take off the motor or anything like that. What you've got is you've got a buck converter. So you've got a 400-volt battery. You want to charge a 14-volt battery. So you have a unit which takes high voltage and produces 14 volts. Okay, and it's called a DC-DC converter. In electronics terms, that would be a buck converter. So this unit charges a 12-volt battery, but very differently from a petrol or diesel car, that process will start when the car is unlocked and the door is opened. So literally, if you're gonna, let's turn it off just because it will moan. But so if you're gonna drive this vehicle, you press unlock, you open the door, and already that DC-DC converter unit is charging the 12-volt battery. Why does it do that? Partly because, why not? Because when you start the van, you're not starting an engine, are you? It's just a change in state. So, the difference between being in ready mode and not being in ready mode is just, the only difference is when you put it in drive and put your foot on the accelerator, it's going to move. It's just a logical state. So because you're not relying on the engine to charge a 12-volt battery to spin an alternator, you can make these things happen whenever you want. And it just so happens in this drivetrain that effectively in this vehicle, which is not started, even if I take the key out, the high voltage system is active. The contactors, the relays and the battery pack are closed. There's high voltage everywhere, and the 12-volt battery is being charged, even though the van is not actually running. Okay, and that's just the way Renault have decided to design the drivetrain, because they can. They don't need it. There's no spinning engine. They can start these modules whenever they like, basically. Different to like a Nissan Leaf. So a Nissan Leaf at this point would not be charging a 12-volt battery, and it would only do it when you put the key in or press your start button. You actually, when you get your ready or your go, however it shows it on the dash, it'd only be charging a 12-volt battery at this point. But this one does it earlier. Now the same thing kind of happens when you turn it off and walk away. So you lock the van or the car, same on a Zoe, and walk away. The high voltage system is still active. and it's still charging the 12-volt battery. And it's almost like they just want to give that 12-volt battery a little extra boost. So if you go on a really short journey, you might as well kind of keep it active for a little bit longer, basically. So it's charging it. And what that means if you're doing work on the vehicle is if you're going to swap a module, like this one that's been on and off multiple times, or you're going to take off airbags or anything like that, you turn off the van, you go under the bonnet, and you take the 12-volt battery, disconnect the 12-volt battery. But then you have to wait about 15 minutes for this van to go to sleep. Okay, so I've explained this to the body shop, and if you don't do that, then you're putting on and off modules and all that kind of stuff, and you're basically kind of disrupting that 12-volt supply, not in a smooth way. You're working on the van, which is not fully asleep. And what's effectively happened is, either just because the van's been to sleep so many times, but more likely because they've been doing work on the van while it's not quite gone to sleep, is that there's been a kind of varying 12-volt supply as they've been plugging in and unplugging modules or airbags or whatever. And that has caused effectively a phantom code. So the ECU, as it's had a really poor and varying 12-volt supply, has put in its memory a fault code which isn't a real code. It doesn't result from a real condition. So normally you would log a code because a condition occurs. That code would cause certain things. So like an interlock would cause a red warning on the dash. It would cause a high voltage system not to start. They build in all this logic. And then when that condition gets resolved, so I put my cover panel back again from the interlock, the micro switch that I exposed, then the red warning went away. My fault code went into memory instead of active, so it became inactive, all this kind of stuff. But because the code was logged just as it was falling asleep, there was no real condition that logged that code. Therefore, there was no real condition that could clear that code, if that makes sense. So it actually, in that condition, in that state, usually they won't clear on their own. You have to give them a proper code, which I did just by investigating the fault. And yeah, so it's basically a phantom code. The body shop said their equipment just can't talk to this van at all, basically. So I'm hoping that's not blurry. It's kind of blurry on the screen, but anyway, I don't know where I think it's focusing here, isn't it? That's what it is, rather than up there. There we go. Anyway, so yeah, they couldn't talk to it, wouldn't be able to clear it. But yeah, I've explained to them that, yeah, if you're going to work on this van, you turn it off, you disconnect the 12-volt battery, and you wait 15 minutes, okay? And then this shouldn't happen, basically, because I've had loads of cars apart doing that and stripped them down, and I've never had that. But I've seen it on cars that come in. I had it on a Zoe. It had a bucket load of phantom codes. And basically the customer said, oh yeah, the 12-volt battery, it was in a really poor state, but we just keep jump starting it. And then at one point, he just basically had a complete meltdown. And that, you know, in that scenario there, that car is experiencing is a poor 12-volt battery and it's going flat, literally. And then they're trying to start it when it's, you know, with a really poor, 12-volt battery, it's probably like 10, 11 volts. At that point, you'll get some ECU start, some don't really properly start. Poor power supplies cause all kind of issues. So, yeah, that Zoe literally, it had a load of phantom codes. I cleared them. We sorted out the 12-volt battery, and it never failed again, basically. It never happened again. So we can be pretty confident that this is because of, they have changed the 12-volt battery on this because he did actually say the old one was really poor, just this van's been sat around, sort of because of the accident. So, yeah, to be fair, could be partly because but then they did drive it at the body shop. So more than likely, it's just because they're not quite aware of the quirk with this drivetrain, which isn't even made by Nissan, it's made by Renault. Yeah, and that it's keeping itself awake for the 15 minutes, and you're going to get a load of weirdness unless you properly let it go to sleep. So that is that, which hopefully that is interesting. We've obviously still got the airbag issue to resolve. So the tool that I borrowed, even though it's like a brand new, very expensive tool, we're talking the best part of like $4,000. The gateway unlock was implemented, but so in terms of fault codes, but not. It basically had the function to initialize a new airbag module, but the garage where I got the tool from were not totally confident whether it would work, basically, and it seemed not to be fully implemented. So it's kind of like, right, okay, we're a little bit wary of doing that. So we left it at resolving the non-start, which is cool. I've driven it a little bit, started it loads of times just to make sure it's stopping and starting okay. I've seen an occasional DC charging possible, but that seems to have gone away since I put it on charge. But, with this van, you're going to, it's in a bit of a state. We're sort of bringing it back from the dead. You're going to have to resolve the major faults and then, see what's left, basically. It's kind of difficult to tell exactly what state it's going to be in. If you've got a further fault, you investigate that. One thing that's interesting is this power meter. When I saw the dash, I kind of presumed that would go up and down as you put your foot down, but it just sits on max. Maybe that's the power that's available, I don't know. But then I put it in eco mode, just to see if that would go bloop, but it doesn't. So that was a bit weird, but anyway. That's you can drive it now, so I'm not worried about that bit. I presume that's as it is. I'll have a look at some reviews just to see if that's always there. Maybe it's always there. Don't know. Strange. Right, so airbag. So we've got the airbag modules. This is the original one. That's the other thing. So the tool, what it could do is communicate with this module, and there is crash data still stored in there. So they had a guy and he said he tried to remove the crash data, blah, 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 whatever. It's not been successful. Nobody who programs or clears modules directly has ever seen the configuration that is inside of here. Nobody knows how to clear that directly, okay? And I've confirmed with the expensive diagnostic tool that still has the crash data in it. So that old module we can't use because nobody can clear it and it's got permanent crash data stored in it. So that one's no good. So basically the only option is using a new module, and we are going to try and code it in a slightly different way. So what it really needs is it needs the original dealer software, okay, because it's a new module and needs to be set up. The body shop tried to talk to Nissan. Nissan won't touch it, basically. They won't touch a van they won't help you get a van that's been in an accident back on the road, basically. Not massively surprising. Dealers are not helpful at the best of time, and they really don't want to get involved in this, basically. It's just not what they do. Fine, so what are we going to do with this van? So we can't clear the old module, so all we can do is set up the new one. So on that very new diagnostic tool, that function doesn't seem to be fully supported, so that's a bit of a non-starter. They do contain the VIN, these modules, and they go through an initialization process, so basically that tells the module what vehicle it's in, because it's fitted in lots of different vehicles, basically. It's a kind of generic module, generic airbag module. Obviously, it's not specific to this van. I mean, for example, you could get a van that's got rear seats and then it might have some rear airbags. So the module needs to know what it's doing. It needs to know what airbags it's monitoring, what seatbelt pretensioners it's got, that kind of thing. So there's an initialization, a configuration process, and it also writes the VIN into that module. It's not part of the immobilizer, so it doesn't cause a non-start. And I know that because if I put in the blank one, the new one, the van still starts. And what it more is to stop you basically one being in a crash and then you just getting one out of another vehicle. Basically, it's just to make sure that stays with this vehicle, but just in terms of crash safety, not in terms of the immobilizer, basically. So we need to set up a new one. So there is one possibility, and I've been thinking about this a lot, and we've had to do some investigating. There is one possibility I can think of to get this airbag module set up outside of the dealer. So there is a programming service that I've used before. So when I put a new module on a Zoe, obviously it's not a crash damaged car. You can take it to Nissan. You can take it to Renault and say to them, I've put a new module on, please can you program it for me? And they will do that, albeit the dealer normally has like a 6-week wait, and when I'm working on a vehicle, I don't exactly know when it's going to be finished, and then you've got to transport it from your location to the dealer. So although they'll do it, it tends to be a pain in the backside. And independent garages fit new modules regularly, and they do it to lots of different vehicles. So there's a company which is a subscription service that you subscribe to, and then they send you what's called a pass-through device. She looks a little bit like this. And basically you connect it to the diagnostic port, and then it's like a module, and then it's got an Ethernet port on it, and you connect that to your router, and then the company communicate with the car as if they were sitting in it, and they have a copy of the original dealer software for loads of manufacturers. So they, for a Zoe, they use something called Clip, which is the dealer software which Renault do allow specialists to buy, but you would only buy it because it's really expensive, basically. So like Jaguar specialists have the original Jaguar dealer software if they want to really invest the money, but this company basically have got all of the original dealer software, so they've paid all the expensive licenses, and then they built this device that means they can communicate with your car over the internet. You subscribe to their service. So on a Zoe, you fit the new blank module, but the car doesn't work because it doesn't know what it's doing. It's a motor controller this happens on. And then you connect their device to the internet, you contact their support and say, I've fitted a new motor controller, please can you program it? And they ask you for all the information about the motor coding and the VIN and all that kind of stuff. So you give them all the information, and they tell you literally to press start, to do all this kind of stuff. Basically, they tell you what to do, which they're running the original dealer software, and it's running on your car. How cool is that? But they're doing it remotely, so it's as if their computer is connected to your car. Very cool. I've done it a few times, works really well, really good success. Obviously, like if the internet drops out mid-programming, it's a game over. And the module might be bricked kind of thing, so there's a little bit of risk. Obviously you accept all the risk kind of thing, but it tends to work pretty well. You want a good internet connection, not like on a wireless access point 100 feet away from the router or anything. So yeah, you want to be plugged into your router on a decent internet connection. It's got to be low latency and all that kind of stuff. You don't want the commands going haywire. But yeah, so this company exists. Obviously this van, it's got a Nissan badge on it, it's made by Renault, we're fitting a Renault part to it. And the other thing is that Nissan are really not helpful at letting other people have their software and using their dealer software. So where lots of manufacturers will allow their software to be used, which they're meant to do, to allow independents to do repairs if they want to specialise and spend, buy the kit. Nissan, just the support is just diabolical, basically. So we contacted the company that offer this subscription service and said, right, this is what we got. It's a Townstar, but it's made by Renault. It's actually got a Renault VIN, which kind of helps. And we want to put an airbag module. Can you do it? And they spoke to their tech guys, and they came back and said, yes, we think we can. They said, it's the first one we've ever done. It's always good. It's always good to be a guinea pig. But they reckon they can do it. So that is the part 2 plan. Having had a look in the data, I think there's a little bit more work the body shop needs to do on the airbags. So I could see the live data. And so, for example, driver's belt pre-tensioner, that one was showing as open circuit, and I think there's one other airbag which had a slightly different resistance, but I'm not an expert on airbags, so that could be correct. But the other thing I was just doing, so when this van has got the new airbag module, it probably will have all these warning lights still, but that will be because it validly needs a little bit more work with the airbags. And then when that's done, the airbag light should go out, basically, because even one airbag issue or one pre-tensioner issue on a seatbelt will cause you to check airbags. So, but we got to, you got to do the first step, and then when you get to the last step, that'll go out. But I've explained this to the customer. Customer is actually really happy because he was sort of thinking nobody knows what to do with this, but it now starts and drives again, and we know why, and we've got a plan for the airbag module. So the other thing I was doing, I've just dug out this tool and I've updated it, because this one gets free updates, so I cast off for the win. Basically, I just got this because I thought I could lend this to the body shop when it goes back, because what they can do is they can use this, even though this is like a really clunky tool, it can, albeit some of the data's a little bit wafty, it can show you data, and it can probably give them enough to check the airbags. So yeah, just kind of looking at this, that seems, I don't know whether that's valid or not. A locking circuit. See, I'm not an airbag expert, so hopefully when they look at this, they will know what it means. So we've got reasonable sort of matching impedances, and I'm kind of thinking this is obviously the configuration of the vehicle, so we haven't got rears, this is the configuration of the vehicle, and I'm hoping they'll be able to use this just to resolve the last airbag issues rather than having to kind of like get other equipment. But you know, it's kind of like one step at a time, basically. Hopefully that would be enough for them. I'm happy to lend them this tool. Yeah, but you can see, so like if you go, this one can actually read codes out of this as well. See, we've got race computer after impact, so we know that the original airbag module still has the crash data in it. Oh yeah, that's that one. Yeah, and if we go in like module information, so when this initialization of the new module takes place, it sets up, so it sets up the VIN, but then there's also this. So this is like the what do you call it? It's like the specific setup of the vehicle, the like variant, or it's not variant, I can't remember what the word is, the configuration anyway of the airbag module, to tell it what it's got in this vehicle, so what it needs to monitor, you know, which airbags does it need to check. So that's yeah, this is the part that we need to do on the new airbag module, basically that setup process, so that this airbag module knows what it should have in this vehicle. So yeah, I'm well impressed with this little thing. It can't talk to the drivetrain at all, to be fair, but it can talk to the airbag module, which is all we need it for. I suspect if I moan at them, I will actually be able to get it to talk to the drivetrain, but it's not capable of doing a gateway unlock anyway, so it's not going to do anything amazing. But I quite like these little tools, because just occasionally like that, they come in really handy. And I've actually like posted this to people just to kind of help them out, basically where they're losing the plot with a vehicle, and I just yeah, lend it to them basically, because just cheap tools, about 100 quid that. But you know, in this situation, it might really help on like a really new van. So hopefully that is interesting. We've now got a van that consistently starts and drives. We've got a plan. Yeah, customer is happy, because they were just like, I thought they didn't have any options. I enjoy this kind of stuff. To be honest, it's a bit of a faff. It's not really you don't really make a lot of money out of a job like this, to be honest. It's no great earner, but it's fascinating. You spend more time researching and kind of playing with things, and you know, trying to get tools and stuff, driving around to get diagnostic tools, that kind of stuff. You know, it's but it's a really interesting one to get involved in. And these accident damage ones, you tend to get to look at a vehicle that you wouldn't yet look at. So I've learned a lot about the drivetrain in this and how it works, and obviously that all relates to the Kangoo E-Tech, and I'm a Renault specialist, really, seem to be by accident. So yeah, so that is quite interesting. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to see whether we can get this sort of fully working, albeit, as I said, it will still have the airbag light on, which is kind of annoying, so you never like 100% know, but hopefully once they've done their work, then that will go out, and yeah, the vehicle can get finished and back on the road, basically. So this is quite cool. So yeah, it's good stuff, and I will chat to you in a bit when we've done a bit more work. All right, cheers.